architectural history of France is really interesting, particularly Paris. When you think of Paris, you normally think of these really big wide streets, but those are actually fairly new in terms of the history of Paris. You see, most of Paris were medieval streets. Parisians did back then what the Parisians like to do now, which is protest. And they would block off all these streets with debris and furniture. Think Les Mis. Well, Napoleon III was tired of this, and so he had a lot of the medieval sections of the city just torn out and ripped apart, just kicking all those inhabitants out because they were also the troublemakers who were always protesting. And he had them build these giant structures that all look very similar. And that's now what we think of when we think of Paris. And while there's definitely still smaller, more medieval sections of the city, the majority of the time when you're thinking about Paris is this. It was all basically to stop the protests of the people who were constantly starting revolutions. Because prior to the French Revolution, and then for about 100 years after the French Revolution, it was just constantly happening in Paris. Also, side note, this is technically not a story on these buildings. It's considered like an attic roof space, even though it has windows, and that's for tax purposes. And all the servants and really poor people would live up at the top floor, which has the best view, but also without elevators, also takes the longest to get up to.